My name is Allison, and these are my adventures on the platform formerly known as Twitter. I apologize for any feline interruptions. Today, I have something very delightful, and by delightful, I mean absolutely soul-crushing. I came across an argument that Hannah, that is Hannah Wallen from this very channel, has been having apparently for several months, and it's with an individual who is going to be our protagonist for today, Claire Bells. All right, so let's just take a look. As you can see, there's plenty of argument going on. We won't go through all of that. We'll just come in right here where Claire Bells gives her opinion of Hannah Wallen. Claire Bells, you're a sad old woman who hates her own sex. It's really hard not to these days. And spends her life begging for scraps from men who don't see her as human. You know, right here, I'm going to point something out about the Radfems. It's a screenshot of something I found on Tumblr a few weeks back that really sort of elucidates why Radfems are scum. So, no matter how a woman behaves, other women are obligated to defend her because of sisterhood, because of the sisterhood. Yeah, no. I don't feel like taking part in. And Claire Bells is, I believe, a Radfem, and that's why Hannah is arguing with her. And that is a really big problem because hates her own sex equates in the Radfem mind to holds them to any kind of moral standards and calls them out for their bad behavior. Hannah Wallen responds with, "Thanks for admitting you're bitter about your incompetence." Trust Hannah to go after a woman for incompetence. And Claire Bell responds with, "I don't beg from acceptance from people who hate me. I have self-esteem." I'd argue that Radfems do actually hate women. Claire Bell says, "Hannah hates women, and it's obvious. She does nothing, if not for a man to notice her." Joke's on Claire. Hannah does everything so that I notice her. And I respond to that, "And you have no feasible plan to get away from your oppressors. So you exist in abject misery for the rest of your life, living in your oppressor's world, reliant on your oppressor's largesse. Save me is the only self you'll ever know." And of course, that's in response to Claire Bell's psychological analysis of Hannah's motivations. Now, again, this is one hell of a long argument that these two women have been having. I'm not going to go over it. If you want, you can go to it yourself. I'll put the link in the low bar. You can witness the cosmological monument that this argument has become. But I'm not going to go through the whole thing. All right, so essentially, Claire Bells, give a summary of her beliefs, is that she believes in a horrible oppressive patriarchy that she lives in. But of course, she has absolutely no plans to get out of. Just like all oppressed people throughout history. You're not going to try to part the Red Sea, not going to engage in a rebellion, not going to have the Underground Railroad, not going to appeal to the North to intercede militarily in the South, not going to work the political landscape to find allies that don't like your oppressors in order to then join together and then crush them. Nah. Claire Bells responds with, "You too. You understand what the world is for women, and you seek to elevate your position by ignoring it and begging for men's benevolence." Actually, I just realized something. This is where the argument ends. She's already signed off on what I said. Like, her entire strategy is to appeal to men. Now, she's not particularly appealing, but she's still appealing to men, even if it's demanding stuff from men. Even if it's being a cunt about it, it's still requiring men to do something on your behalf. Regardless of how bitchily you ask, you still are reliant on men. And right here, she's just like, "Yeah, I am. I sure am. I sure don't have any other way of dealing with my situation except for demanding stuff from men. I know those oppressive bastards, but what else can you do but just ask them for stuff, right? So she's admitting that she also relies on men, right? Right there. Yep. Both in the same boat, me and her. But apparently I'm elevating my position, which is reliance on men, just like her, to some other position, which is unspecified, by ignoring the way that she's characterized the world, which is that you can't rely on men. I could end this here, folks. I could, but I won't because I'm stubborn. All right, so I respond with, do you have an alternative? Presuming your worldview true, that you can't rely on men, and your solution is to rely on men. And then Twitter does more weird Twitter threading, and we get here. Claire Bells. And you keep proving me right. I don't think you're strong enough to accept the world as it is. Men are unreliable because they are horrible oppressors and would never actually do anything for women because they constructed an entire system to exploit them. But the way that you deal with them is to ask them for stuff. That's the world as it is it? But let's move on. I respond with, you are going to live in man's world until the day you die. You have no alternative to this fate. In fact, your ability to exist hangs on your oppressor's beneficence. You have no strategy to exit man's world. Your only strategy is to be a cunt to the very people you are desperately and terminally reliant on. And Claire Bells has the audacity to say, and there it is. You're angry at women who challenge this. You're scared to do so. Your brain is full of self-contradictory fuck. I have no interest in attempting to turn my mind into a pretzel that allows me to believe your worldview for no purpose, apparently, because you still rely on men anyway. You're just not brave enough. Damn right I'm not brave enough. Okay. You don't challenge it. That is man's world. Once again, you will live in man's world until the day you die. And Claire Bells responds with, yup, and the poor live in rich man's world, except there used to be upward mobility. People of color live in a white world. Gay people in a homophobic world, etc. Life is hard, don't you know? And I respond with, why don't you demand more shit from the men you say hate you? You say that men oppress women. They do a really shit job that when all they need to do is tell you no every time you demand something. And Claire Bell says, and another pivot from you. Do you enjoy it when men hate you? A pivot back to the topic? This is going to be one of those. I respond with, do you? You seem to imagine it a lot. I mean, she seems to spend most of the day imagining that men hate her. And Claire Bell says, oh, good old it never happened. Even though you've seen their comments, yes, it seems you do like it. Yeah, I saw those comments, and I saw your mischaracterization of them. And then I go back to the topic. Keep demanding shit from men who you say don't care about you. And Claire Bells responds with, yup. No. Oh, God, Twitter threading. I'm sorry. Okay, so here it is. This is what I say. Why don't you demand more shit from the men who say hate you? Claire Bells responds, like how women have done in the past and it worked? I sure will. Yes, I'm sure you will continue to demand shit from men. And she says, I just said this, so yeah. Well, then you rely on what you says doesn't exist. Men's consideration. And of course, we get into a flippant argument about consideration. So she thinks that my problem with this strategy is I honestly and genuinely think it doesn't work. That women demanding shit from men doesn't work. That's what she thinks I have a problem with. No, I know it works. What I'm saying is that if you're going to propose that we live in a society in which men cannot be relied upon to help women, demanding help from them shouldn't work. And yet it does. So one of these things is a lie. You are killing me today, Twitter. Okay, finally. What was that, honey? It works. And I respond with, in your words, explain why men give in to your demands. She responds with, we already went through this. How many more times do you want to do this? You said it works. Why keep arguing? I'm asking why. Why does it work? Because force works. We done? Don't you have a non-job to do? Why did the force work? Because force works. Go read a history book on it. I know you can't read, but try. Military force works. Sure. That's not the force you're talking about. Claire Bells, look up what the feminists did and you'll have your answer. And I respond with, in history, oppression has been resolved by war. Point me to the great feminist wars. She goes off on some. Just asking has never ended oppression. If she eventually gets into what exactly she meant by force, I will have to find that in this incredibly confusing thread. All right, so I'm going to go on this one. This is a bit of a tangent. Trust me, that exchange just goes on and on and on and on. She brings up boycotts, protests, and hunger strikes. And I point out that none of those things work unless you have a third party to appeal to. What's the third party between men and women? No answer so far. None whatsoever. So, and here's my direct response to this whole thing that Radfems expect from me. They expect me to behave like an abusive asshole to men, to believe lies about reality, that men are somehow unreliable, but you get things from them reliably by asking for them or demanding them. And at the same time, what do they offer? They aren't constructing a viable alternative. So this is what I say. Every day I have natural gas, potable water, electricity, internet, and goods delivered to my house as a direct result of men's labor, which I see them doing every day. Snow is cleared, roads are fixed, garbage is removed, men's labor. They ask for nothing from me but to contribute to my portion of a living wage. What do Radfems offer? In exchange for my allegiance to their dubious nonsense, I will get what? If I give up the benefits of men's world, what do I get in exchange? What's on offer? Is there a Radfem natural gas company, sewer workers, electricity, repair dikes? What? Or do I just get the exact same thing I have now, living in man's world, but without the massive chip on my shoulder that somehow justifies my wife beating the shit out of me every day, ending in Y? Right? You're not offering an alternative to man's world. You don't even think to offer an alternative or to start building one, a way out, parting the Red Seas, taking the Underground Railway, trying to find a third party with a better deal. None of that. No. This person's entire solution to men being horrible oppressors is to ask for stuff or to do a hunger strike. Surely our horrible oppressors will care if we starve ourselves to death. Or a protest. Surely our horrible oppressors will care if we go into the streets. That doesn't work without a third party to appeal to. And throughout the entirety of the Civil War, civil rights movement, they did have to appeal to a third party. That is a culturally distinct group with, well, they had to establish it, but military power over their direct oppressors. So don't give me this crap. And then gay men? Well, originally they didn't have an identity. They were just considered criminals. So they were just considered engaging in a criminal behavior. After they developed an identity, they had to show that they had some kind of benefit to the greater society through their income. So what did they appeal to? They appealed to corporate interests over government laws. Right? Once again, a third party. You don't appeal directly to your oppressor to end the oppression. That has never worked. And where it has worked, it's because, one, the oppressor was losing power for whatever reason. Maybe they had military power or losing economic power. Maybe they had economic power or losing military power. They were losing power probably as a result of some kind of force applied to them, either by third parties or by the oppressed people themselves, or they never were particularly oppressive in the first place. So the idea that an oppressed people, whenever a group of people who say they're oppressed, say the way that we resolve our issues is by appealing to our oppressor, no. Oppressive regimes of any sort are not resolved by the people they're oppressing just asking. Particularly not asking in the most abusive, cunty way possible. All right. So she responds with, men build stuff so women can't complain mistreatment. Ah, my favorite excuse. I respond with, of course they can. It's called reporting a crime, asshat. You most likely be doing that to a man as well. Clarabelle responds without any apparent understanding of what I just said. And it disappears because of course they can. Okay. But honey, men build stuff, so women must endure harm and not complain, right? I just said men also built the criminal justice system, which gives you redress when you experience abuse. This is possibly the worst threaded Twitter argument I have ever gotten into. This is like a frickin' nightmare. And it isn't even the feminist that's the nightmare here. It is the frickin' threading. None of this works without a third party to appeal to. Who's the third party between men and women? And she responds, so it worked. Hence, women's rights. And I say, yes, demanding things from men works for women. And she responds with, yup. And I respond with, because women don't need to appeal to third party. They can appeal directly to men. And Clarabelle says, there's never been a third party. So now that you admit I'm correct, you're done whining at me. And ever the optimist me, again, you misunderstood the entirety of this argument. You've only ever appealed to men because that is your only strategy, despite insisting they don't care. You're right. There's never been anyone else for you to appeal to but men, and women never needed anyone else to appeal to but men. Patriarchy. All right, this spaghetti, I can't even. So, gentlemen, how did you get taken in by this crap for 60 years? Right? Like 160? How? How did this ever become something put into the thought sphere as intelligent conversation? We've been going back and forth for several days now. Still no answer. She has thrown everything but the kitchen sink at me. Apparently, I'm an apologist for Giselle Pellicot's abuse by the 50 men who engaged in... And I pointed out that the men who are responsible for ending this are the policemen who found this footage and didn't just ignore it. They actually pursued it to the point of a prosecution. Because if it was up to her, she would still be losing 2 to 3 days of time worth a week without noticing. And that would still be happening to her. So it's men who are responsible for not just bringing these men who engaged in this behavior to justice, but finding out about the crime in the first place. Men. And she's like, oh, you're going to live in a world. I'm like, well, I'll take heart that I live in a world where there are men in the criminal justice system who, if I ever am in the circumstance where I'm losing 2 to 3 days of time a week without noticing, these men will actually make the effort to protect me. Like, what do you do? And she's saying that I'm justifying the abuse that she experienced. No. I'm saying that she'd still be experiencing it if it weren't for men. If there were no men, she'd probably be raped by Radfems. Like, seriously. All right. Anyway, so that is, I don't know if I can. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Adventures on Twitter. I apologize for the excessive amount of insane Twitter threading. This one was particularly difficult because it's gigantic. It involves months, possibly months, at least weeks of content. And every time I clicked on something, it would just like bamfed me into another universe, another Twitter Taurus strip. Anyway, so that happened. I want you to have a lovely second brunch, breakfast, morning, evening, afternoon, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, whatever time it is, enjoy. And thank you for your kind attention. See you next time.